Good morning, everyone. I hope all of you had a good rest after a good reception last night. Uh, Let me take the opportunity to welcome all of you to SF and also to this session of South Asia Department, which is focused on the regional power trade. As you all know that all of these countries in South Asia have ambitious climate change targets, and then the regional power trade has enormous potential to contribute and meet these climate change actions and ambitions. We have been having this kind of South Asia specific sessions in all the SF in the past, but this year we felt that how important this topic is for our region, for South Asia region. That's why we have put together this session for this session today in order to highlight what has already happened in the region and what kind of challenges and issues that we have, and then how can we work together to overcome those. So this is the kind of a broad theme of this topic today. There is a first session, we will have a dialogue with the policymakers, and then we'll have a break, and after that we'll talk with the with the champions to go through the details of how they were able to do. So without a further ado, I would like to invite Sujata Gupta. She's a director in ADB to give the opening remarks. Sujata, please.
So, good morning to all of you, and a very warm welcome to all the esteemed delegates. So, ladies and gentlemen, zero is something which has a very negative connotation. You know, when we did our exams, you got a zero. It wasn't considered to be good. So, however, net zero, this is a term that resonates very well with those of us or anyone discussing climate change. And the idea behind net zero is very straightforward, that the emissions of greenhouse gases and their removal from the atmosphere should be equal. So, hence, no net emissions of greenhouse gas emissions. But as practitioners in this field, we understand that the path to net zero is far from simple. It is fraught with many challenges that demand our attention, expertise, and actually, beyond all this, very, very importantly, a collective commitment. So, with this hope of collaborating in the South Asia region and discovering credible solutions to drive the region towards a sustainable future, I welcome you all to this session on power trade for a carbon neutral South Asia. The urgency to accelerate energy transition is not lost on us. However, this calls for enhanced flexibility in our systems, energy systems, and pushing the boundaries of innovation to increase the penetration of renewable energy. One of the most promising, and I say this with the South Asia region in mind, for us is regional cross border electricity trade. This practice not only holds immense potential for decarbonization of the power sector in South Asia, but also addresses the seasonal demand and supply gaps. So, by developing a large scale, cleaner, greener, and sustainable energy infrastructure, we can pave the way for a future that is both environmentally responsible and economically viable. So, it's not only for the environment, but also looking at it from the economic aspect. It is crucial for us to recognize that the current installed capacity of renewables in South Asia is much below its potential. And we stand on the precipice of a remarkable opportunity to unlock this untapped potential and harness the power of cross border trading for the excessive generation of renewable energy, be it solar, wind, or hydropower. Hydropower would currently be the most significant. Such initiatives play a pivotal role in the clean energy transition, grid balancing, and enhancing energy security in our region. So, however, accomplishing these objectives will require the concerted efforts of all stakeholders. So, governments, business, private sector, individuals must unite under a shared purpose, transcending borders and ideologies to achieve this ambitious net zero target. We need to establish suitable policies to create an enabling environment that fosters collaboration and partnerships amongst nations. This will provide the necessary foundation for promoting regional power trade and enabling South Asia to move closer to a carbon neutral future. In addition to policy frameworks, both public and private capital is crucial. So we need to be able to attract investments to fund climate resilient infrastructure and institutional developments that would ensure the success of large scale energy projects. And in all this, collaboration is instrumental. So today's session is a testament to our commitment for sharing experiences and knowledge, learning from one another how to accelerate progress and overcome these challenges in an efficient and effective manner. We will also, in this meeting today, discuss the latest technological innovations that can bolster resilience of our infrastructure and pave the way for greater renewable energy uptake and power trade. ADB has been actively engaged in regional cooperation and integration in the energy sector through our South Asian sub-regional economic cooperation, where we have undertaken various studies on capacity building programs, thereby reiterating our commitment to continued support for this important endeavor for the region. Together, we have the power to shape a sustainable and prosperous future for South Asia and beyond. By seizing these opportunities before us, we can create a region that serves as a shining example of clean energy integration and collaboration. So the key word is collaboration for this to be successful. For this, let us work together to establish the necessary frameworks, mobilize required resources, and embrace technological advancements for the greater good of our planet and, more importantly, future generations. In closing, I urge you all to actively participate in the discussions ahead. Let us harness our collective wisdom, expertise, and innovative spirit to develop large-scale clean energy projects, power trade opportunities, and resilient infrastructure to pave the way to a carbon neutral South Asia and a sustainable future for all. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Sujata. Now let's move to our next part of our program, where we'll be having a dialogue with the policy makers. So let me invite four distinguished panelists to the dais so that we can begin our discussion. So first, let me invite Dinesh Gimire, Secretary, Ministry of Energy, Water Resources and Irrigation, Government of Nepal. So Dinesh, sir, please. And I would also like to invite Mapa Mati Rana, Secretary, Ministry of Power and Energy, Sri Lanka. Niroj Chandra Mondal, Joint Secretary, Power Division, Bangladesh. And Dr. Jyoti Parikh, Executive Director, Integrated Research and Action for Development, IRADE, India. So I would like to welcome all of you to this panel. Thank you. So now I will also move here so that it will be easier for me. So I think just to begin our discussion today, I think those of you who don't know me, I'm Jeevan Acharya. I'm the Principal Energy Specialist in ADB South Asia Energy Division, and I'm also the focal for regional cooperation in the energy sector for South Asia. And with that context, I'll be moderating this session today. So what we will do is that we have four panelists, and then I will be requesting them to make an opening remarks for about 5, 7, or let's say maximum of 10 minutes each of them. And after that, we will have I have prepared a very difficult questions for them, and then let's see how they respond to it. And after that, we'll also open the floor for any question and answer. So, so let me just go through that list. So I would like to request Secretary Dinesh Gimire for your opening remarks, sir, please. It's on the power trade related things, what's happening in Nepal, how can you contribute and how can you benefit out of this one? So, sir, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jeevanji. First of all, I'd like to thank ADB for inviting me in this as chef and providing this opportunity to be a panelist in this very important topic. Regarding power trade in South Asia, I feel that almost all groundworks for power trading have been completed, and we have already begun our trade in a different modalities. The bilateral one, which was existing from since long, and then we are trying to move from bilateral to trilateral and multilateral, and effort on that is very progressive. So every countries in South Asia have their own potential, own resources. So the very objective of South Asian power trade is to utilize the diverse resources existing in different countries, so that it increases the reliability, it increases the stability, it decreases the cost of generation, it provides the energy security. So for that, like for example, in Nepal we have lots of hydropower. In Bangladesh, maybe gas, coal, Bhutan, hydropower. So India is a big market hub for all, our generations, So this gives the immense benefit for us to have all these benefits I mentioned. Now in our country, in case of Nepal, we have already, been the surplus, energy surplus country in the monsoon season, at least. So we have our demand to the tune of 2,000 megawatt, and generation in the wet season is around 2,700. So we have a surplus of 7 to 800 megawatt already in the wet season. Whereas in the dry season, we have to still import some power from India, but within 2 to 3 years time, we intend to be a round year surplus country, because many hydropower plants from private sectors are coming to the system. So that makes us the surplus country even in the dry season. So to evacuate all these powers, we are trying our best to strengthen our internal transmission networks, as well as we have given utmost priority to construct the cross-border transmission lines so that we can evacuate the power, surplus power that we don't utilize in the country to our big neighbors. So there has been a friendly mechanisms, secretaries and secretary level meetings where we discuss the modalities of power trade, the construction of transmission lines, and try to create the conducive environment for sub-regional or regional trade. So that's what we are doing, and I stop here for now. I'll go more into detail when another, I get the questions from moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I will come back to you with difficult questions later on. So now let's move on to Secretary Mapa from Sri Lanka.
Good morning to everybody. And this is a good opportunity for all of us to discuss the regional initiative. I think Dinesh already mentioned we are having the regional roundtable discussion with the power secretaries and the deputies also. Then we had basic understanding among ourselves how we can move forward. Before we discuss with the inter-regional and sub-regional power trade, I would like to mention about in the context of Sri Lanka. The Sri Lanka has an installed capacity of around 2,500 megawatt. If we consider in the last 5 years, on average, being generated around 30% from hydropower and 30% from coal, another 30% from liquid fuel, around 10% from the non-conventional renewable energy. These numbers will be changed depending on the rainfall pattern. And sometimes we are having more than 51% come from the electrical energy generation by sources, renewable energy 52%. During the past 2 years, we were 10% non-conventional renewable energy increased to 20%. The government of Sri Lanka has made a policy directive for the set the target generating 70% of the electrical to renewable energy by 2030. Under that, we have prepared 2 plans with our utility agencies, as with the Sustainable Energy Authority had detailed discussion, and accordingly they have prepared 2 plans. One is 2023 to 26, another one is 27 to 30. Those details will be further presented by our General Manager CB next session. I'm not going to discuss about all these details. I think you can get more inside information from the next session. In the same time that we are having the target like in the other carbon neutrality by 2015, also in the same time that we commence the restructuring process of electricity ongoing, and accordingly we are trying to achieve the efficiency within the sector. When it is come to the implementation, even the microeconomic challenges faced by the countries, Sri Lanka and our ministry together with the utility agency working towards achieving the above targets. That's why I mentioned that we have prepared 2 plans. These included long-term generation plan as well as development project initiated by the government with the great difficulties and challenges we are now facing. All options available in the meeting of policy directives are being considered in different scenarios and accordingly, and we are taking to get a maximum benefit from our abundant renewable energy sources. Main focus has been given to harness these resources in effective and efficient manner. In the same time that we have initiated Sri Lanka-India interconnection, and these point of interest many front, we are thinking about how we can get maximum benefit out of that, especially when it is come to improvement of reliability, as mentioned by my friends Dinesh also. They also had the same kind of problem earlier at the initial stage. Attract stable and cost competitive power sector to Sri Lanka. Also, we are having a lot of challenges facing how we can attract more competitive power to Sri Lankan requirement. Not only that, in future, we have to think about the regional perspectives. And at the same time, option for exporting electricity also, we are thinking how best we can do and what are the opportunities we are having. In the same time, the increasing power demand within the meeting with the NDC target also. That's why we are thinking how we can develop this sector within the facing challenges and overcome the some very negative setback also. In closing, then I can mention that Sri Lanka interconnection between Sri Lanka and India have been discussed over the 20 years now. Our ministry and the Indian government, as well as our the relevant agencies, now we have been discussing with them how and the technical meeting also take place in coming week also, how we can get the this initiative and get maximum benefit. As mentioned by Dinesh also, still we have some issues to be resolved. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Mapa. Now let's move on to Bangladesh. So Nirud Mandal, Joint Secretary. I understand you have a PowerPoint. You want? Huh? Now maybe better. Yeah. You want presentation? You have? Yeah.
Honorable Director, South Asia Energy Division, ADV, Ms. Sujata Gupta, Excellencies Secretary, Minister of Energy, Water Resource and Irrigation, Nepal, Mr. Dinesh Gimere, Excellencies Secretary, Minister of Power and Energy, Sri Lanka, Mr. Marfa Pathirana, Dr. Jyoti Prakash, Executive Director, Integrated Energy and Integrated Research and Development, India, and respected moderator, Mr. Gian Acharia, Principal Energy Specialist, ADB, distinguished delegates, and very good morning to you all, and welcome to the presentation on carbon neutral power trade for a carbon neutral South Asia. Sorry. Yes. So you look at the geography of the South Asia, the regional power trade, the connectivity is essential. We have the connectivity with India. India have the connectivity with Nepal and Bhutan, but we have to develop the connectivity. India have to develop the connectivity between Pakistan and India, and also Pakistan to Afghanistan, and as well as to connectivity to the Sri Lanka. It was some difficult to connectivity with Maldives. It is not economically viable. The South Asia power system. Look at the South Asia power system. The vertically integrated system, and most of them are single wires except India, and except Afghanistan there are private sector participation and independent regulator. Only India has the power market, approximately 10% power trading through this market. The potential, hydro potential, there are huge hydro potential in the South Asian region, except Bangladesh. Bangladesh almost limited potential, only one hydropower plant in Bangladesh, its capacity of 230 megawatt. The Bangladesh power sector scenario, the generation capacity more than 25,000 megawatt, and we are now trading 1,900 megawatt from India. The renewable scenario in Bangladesh, we have enormous potential in solar, but we have limited potential in hydro, some potential in domestic biomass gasification and castle waste. And we are in the process of wind mapping. Power trade with neighboring countries. I mentioned earlier, Bangladesh is surrounded by India. There's a very small portion border with Myanmar. I have mentioned earlier that we have the connectivity India, and India has the connectivity Bhutan and Nepal. Sorry. The power input plan for neighboring countries. In our master plan, the capacity of the in 2040 will be the 60,000 megawatt, out of which 9,000 megawatt imported by regional power trade. In 2025, we have planned to import from by regional trade 3,000 megawatt, and 2030 in 5,000 megawatt, and 2035 in 7,000 megawatt, and 2040 in 9,000 megawatt. And we have a plan to import 5,000 megawatt from India, 2,500 megawatt from Nepal, 1,000 megawatt from Bhutan, and 500 megawatt from Myanmar. The suitable point of interconnection for cross-border electricity trade. We have three interconnectivity, cross-border connectivity with India. One is Komilla Tripura, another is Bheramara Bharampur, and another connectivity in Chapainawganj and Murshidabad in India, that is Jharkhand. And we have the future connectivity, which can be acted as a connectivity. One is in our northern part is Dinaspur, Boropukuria, another is Moiminsing region, and one is the southern, southwest part, that is Jashore and Khulna. Present status of cross-border power trade with India. Now we are importing power, only importing power from India. We are importing power from India since 2019, started from 500 megawatt. Now we are importing total import power is 1,908 megawatt. Another power plant, that is Adani Power, which is situated in Jharkhand, will be added to our national grid this year. The total capacity of the import cross-border electricity import is 2,656 megawatt. We are very much aligned with our power system master plan. Sorry, not working. I have mentioned earlier, already mentioned earlier, there are 3 connectivity with India. Plan for cross-border power trade with India. Bangladesh Power Development Board is in the process of participating in day-ahead market of India Power Exchange. Initially, Bangladesh can purchase additional 50 to 100 megawatt from Power Exchange India through Bharamara Baharampur transmission link. Present status of cross-border trade with Nepal. 40 megawatt power from Nepal through Indian grid. Finalization of power sale agreement is in process. 500 megawatt power from GMR Upper Karnali. Power sale agreement finalized and vetting completed. Development of Shankushi 3 683 per megawatt hydropower plant in Nepal under joint venture between Bangladesh and Nepal. Review of environmental impact assessment report and feasibility study in progress. A joint venture agreement is expected to be signed within next 6 months. Important issues for cross-border. For each new interconnection, a detailed feasibility study is mandatory, which includes detailed technical, detailed technical, including optimum power flow, studies for identifying suitable mode, that is synchronous, asynchronous, radial mode, economic analysis, and environmental analysis. For synchronized interconnection with other countries, ensuring multiple power point of interconnection for system security and reliability. Detailed feasibility study to identify suitable sites for large-scale hydro-based power generation having minimum environmental impacts. Sorry. Important issues for cross-border electricity trade. We have for regional electricity trade, we have to have the bilateral power trade, multilateral power trade, and then regional power trade. We have the power trade mechanism between India. We are in the process of power trading mechanism with Nepal as well as Bhutan. There are some challenges in cross-border electricity trade. These are technical issues and contextual issues. There are many technical issues. Every country has different power system and different grid code, and there are some critical issue we have to solve it. Then contextual issue and regulatory framework. Every country has the different regulation and regulatory frameworks, and we have to solve this issue for regional connectivity. And for feasibility study, all this aspect is required, and the proper coordination and cooperation among the countries, this South Asia region. We hope with proper cooperation and coordination and the assistance from development partners, we can develop a regional power market, power exchange and power trading for regional market is very much possible. We hope we will able to establish a regional power market in future. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for a very detailed presentation. Appreciate that. Now, Dr. Jyoti Parikh.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I will be speaking on regional power system interconnectivity. We've been I am from Irade, and we have been working on this from multiple perspective, but just we have a broader perspective which we also include urban systems, power, and we have Asia Center at the bottom there, climate change and other issues also. So for regional connectivity, we've been working on this for now 12, 15 years, and different stages, and with USAID, UKID, now ADB cooperation. This can show that the power system of Nepal and Bhutan is predominantly hydro, Bangladesh diesel gas, and India coal. India has many other resources as well. And we started seriously, I mean, things were going on between India and Nepal, India and Bhutan first, and India and Nepal very, very small way. And we started in 2012 with some 1,200 megawatts or so, and reached 3,780 by by 2020. And so there is a good story there, and we thought, let's see how far can it go. Uh, we have already, because of you already heard from Mr. Mondal too, you have several transmission network frameworks already, which can carry almost 4 gigawatts, and already 8,000 gigawatts of, megawatts, 8 gigawatts of power can be extended in future. These are under pipeline. So one can see that there are 3 changes taking place. Government to government contracts are replacing, or are now also going towards market price. Bilateral fixed price contracts are going now to market-based trade. Then also from bilateral to trilateral and multilateral power trade. And we also are going from transmission to generation projects. Transmission projects are far less costly, but now we heard that Nepal is also installing generation power plants. So that indicates trust in the system, and people are now ready to start selling and buying power. Nepal earlier was only buying power from India long time ago, and now it's selling also. And Bangladesh also has increased its share to 10%. Bhutan was there for a long time. So we thought, let's see how far can it go, and till 2050, what is its future? So we have a technology choice model, answer times, and it minimizes power system cost. And model parameters are the usual model parameters. We consider the policies of each country, as we know. And we also have, for the first time, load curves. So 288 load points are there for that. So we see that how much can it increase if in future, so later on we will link it with the CO2 emissions and so on. So it is not just power trade, but you will find it also leads to economic benefits, economic and transformative and so on. So this is it would reach currently, you had shown you 400 gigawatts of system, which became 2,000 now in 2050, and far, far more renewable. You can see it's growing, share is growing for renewables. You can see also the load curve that India in January exports the red line, and Nepal imports it, but then sometimes it's the other way around in June. So CO2 emission benefits are quite high. I've shown it here like this, but then later on we have also calculated it is about 700 million tons of CO2 emissions cumulative. So that's quite a substantive thing. Then we have regional. Now, so we thought, let's look at the economic transition taking place because of this. It spills far beyond power sector. It goes into solving economic problems and also solving CO2 problems. So we have Indian, uh, this is the power system. We have added Myanmar and Sri Lanka also. Still now, these are all in pipeline. Then you can see that your technology model is linked to economy model, and whatever technology outputs are there, first we fed it to economy, we see the economy growing, asking for more power, and so on. So Bangladesh, for example, without power, does not ask for as much power, but then once it grows, it develops its economy, it has far more need for power sector also. Now, basic model assumptions are usual, and there's a social accounting matrix which which has all the sectors. So when economy grows, for example, Bhutan's economy has increased from their GDP was half as much than India some 30 years, 25 years back, and now it is twice as high. So 4 times increase took place in per capita GDP. That means more tourism and more further electricity needs. So all that was possible to do with this thing. So we should not think regional connectivity as an only a system for power to power sector. So now I was look at the also various trade scenario under in the economic model. And here I can't, maybe I see it here. Uh, so Nepal, if we had not done power connectivity, it would have 13 terawatt hour generation, but because of the power connectivity, it has gone to 85. Bhutan, if so and so on, and 2050, it reaches to 211 terawatt hour. If you look at the Bhutan also, and not only you see the magnitudes growing, but also the share is changing, of renewables. So renewable now, you have a new solar coming up there also in Bhutan. And here in Bangladesh, for example, without trade as usual means current trade, actually, and it is accelerated trade. AT is accelerated trade. So accelerated trade, I think this is a labeling issue. So you have far more need what is also important is to see the structure of the power system has far more renewables. So you are also not only growing with less capacity, but also changing it towards the renewable. So India generation also has changed a lot because of the trade. But far more, the other smaller countries have looking at far more benefits. I will skip that, it's too complicated. Macroeconomic benefits for everything. But we have already seen that limited domestic fuel, fossil fuel resources, for Bangladesh, it is cheaper to import electricity than fuels. India, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka import power from Nepal and Bhutan. And though India has a large share of its own, but total capacity requirement in Bangladesh is reduced by 14%, and instead it's using those money for doing other things in other sectors of the economy, and 46% in 2050. In Sri Lanka, seabed reduces capacity requirement to 40% and 30% in 2050. In India, has a little smaller impact. So, and you could, so I've described some of that already. Let me skip to the, I think it's not sensitive enough to. Ah, okay. So without seabed, Nepal is able to utilize 10 gigawatt of its 43 gigawatt hydro potential. It would not be, the hydro potential will not be able to do. So I'll stop at this point saying that we have now seen that 400 gigatons of uh, uh, 750 million tons of CO2 can be saved, and 400 gigawatt system can go into 2000 gigawatt system at the regional level. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Parikh. We have a little more than half an hour, so as a privilege, being being a moderator, I have the privilege to ask the questions first, and then I will definitely open the floor for any questions from your side. So let me start with Nepal. So, Secretary Sir, it's we have noted a very good progress in the power arrangement between Nepal and India, and we're also very pleased to see that the discussion going on between Nepal and Bangladesh as well. So these are very, very welcoming progress, and then that will really pave the way for moving forward in the power trade for Nepal and also its contribution to the region. But I have three questions which I would like to request you to elaborate further. One is, of course, whether the countries will import or export, but how is the preparation within Nepal on its readiness activities, which means the infrastructure, especially on the transmission connectivity, and also the policies and regulation, what is the status of that? And also there's a discussion of having the discussion about private sector wanting to export electricity to India and others. How is government looking at that prospect as well? And finally, because in the area of climate change that we are all witnessing right now, how Nepal, being such a rich in hydropower, you see the possibility of Nepal contributing to addressing climate change in these neighboring countries. Nepal is having a very large hydropower, some storage hydropower could serve as a kind of a battery for South Asia as well. So if you could kindly comment on these aspects, please.
Thank you very much. So as you highlighted, just a week ago, during our Right Honorable Prime Minister's visit to India, we were able to, agree with India that 10,000 megawatt in 10 years time frame will be exported to India in a mid and long term basis. So this has paved the way for a number of things. One is the investors. Nepal has tremendous hydro potential, and so many, private developers, public utilities, investors from abroad, are wanting to invest in Nepal, but they were, afraid of the market actually, because Nepal has already turned into surplus country. So there is no enough domestic demand there. So where to sell the power? So this agreement of exporting 10,000 megawatt in 10 years has, given the solution to those investors and rather encourage them to come and invest in Nepal. So talking about the readiness, actually, we are now, in the process of strengthening our internal system, the transmission lines and distribution lines particularly, because a lot of generators, are already investing and, constructing the power plants. But the two parts, the internal one, we have to reinforce, strengthen our own internal lines also to evacuate power to, use domestically, as well as the cross-border transmission lines to evacuate power to the neighboring countries. So for internal part, the government has prioritized the transmission sector and building more and more 400 kV, 220 kV, river linking transmission lines, east-west, highway transmission highways. So all are being, constructed, and we are prepared to, evacuate the existing generations from the different developers, and we have plans to upgrade that, gradually as the generation comes in. In the cross-border parts also, with India, we have been negotiating, and now there are 11 interconnection points to export power from Nepal to India, and out of those, within the next 5 years time frame, we will be getting 5 interconnection lines, 400 kV interconnection lines ready by another 5 years. One is already now operational, another one is under construction. So that way we are preparing to have a cross-border power trade. So policy, we are bringing the Electricity Act, new Electricity Act. So that is already, a final draft has been prepared, and we are going to submit it to the cabinet soon, and then hopefully we'll get it approved by the parliament. So that includes the, power trade, both internal and external, which was not there in our earlier Electricity Act. So once that is promulgated, that opens the, power trade business for all the, public and private developers. And then more on that, we are bringing the, the cross-border trade guidelines, just to get those private sectors also in the mainstream of power trade. We have to, of course, follow the Indian cross-border trade guidelines, but we also, are making the internal cross-border trade guideline that, will have some provisions how to get those private sectors into the cross-border power trade. So that is there, and we're soon bringing it. And then, climate change is of the utmost priority of the government of Nepal. One thing we all have to notice, our generation source is almost 100% hydropower. 100% hydropower, and but the contribution of hydropower in the overall energy pie is only about 7 to 8%. Now, when we go on, replacing the fossil fuel-based generation sources by generating more and more of hydropower, we will be automatically making our transition to clean energy. So, which is very climate friendly. We not only do that, we are seeing the NDC targets of our neighboring countries. India has targeted to, have 50% renewable energy by 2030, which is a, huge capacity. Likewise, Bangladesh, in its master plan, as Nirud presented it also, by 2030, its load will go to something like 40,000 megawatt. And by 2040, it goes up to 60,000 megawatt. And it has, in its master plan, said to import the some 9,000 megawatt from Nepal and Bhutan. So we see tremendous export potential of our hydropower to these neighboring countries. And we ourselves have targeted to generate, 15,000 megawatt hydropower by 2030. So what I want to say here is, Nepal being a hydropower rich country and having a tremendous potential of something like 45,000 megawatt, 43,000 megawatt, techno-economically feasible, we will meet our NDC targets, but we will not be limited on that. We will be helping reduce our neighboring countries' emission reduction targets and meet their NDCs by exporting more and more hydropower and replacing their fossil fuels based energy resources. So that way, we can be the, leading countries in, the clean energy transition in the sub-region. So I stop here for now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We may come back to you later also. So now to Secretary Mapa, it's also very encouraging that you are also looking at this prospect of power trade and connecting with India as well. I think that will really open up the possibilities of energy cooperation in the region. But how is the preparation also? A very similar question that I asked to Nepal is in terms of your policies, guidelines, regulations, and also what kind of business models that you are looking at in constructing those cross-border transmission lines and so on. So if you could kindly elaborate that one, would be good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we are still in the initial stage, not like Bangladesh or Nepal. They have gone long way. But when it is come to the interconnectivity, the capacity development is required for Sri Lanka, especially the diverse development of appropriate regulatory framework. At the same time, we have to think about market design and business model selection also. Then technically know-how, as well as we have to think about the environment and social safeguard measures, because this interconnectivity go over the sea also. Then we have to pay much attention about the safeguard matters. When it is come to the appropriate regulatory framework, I think there should be clear, comprehensive regulatory framework, and on the cross-border power trade, and in the same time framework has to be addressed issues such as market rules, as mentioned also, Dinesh, and pricing mechanism and licensing requirement, as well as dispute resolution if it is having. Then in addition, well-defined legal and contractual framework has to be discussed. These matters we discuss among the roundtable discussion among the secretaries also, how we can further enhance these particular areas also. When it is come to the market design and business model selection, I think this is the prime target in Sri Lanka, what kind of business model we have to think and see how best, and our development partners, ADB and World Bank, USAID, and other development partners also helping, and they have conducted separate studies also with the assistance of the consultants, and see how best we can address these issues also. Then basically critical area is project implementation with we have to think how best we can reserve the required capital investment for this one. When we are having the special purpose vehicle set up, then the whole two countries has to submit, share the equity capital, also seeing whether it can be done by raising the financial assistance from our multilateral sources or private sector. If it is private sector come, then we have to give some the readiness also for them too, because some issues has to be addressed when the private sector investment come. Those things we have to discuss in detail and finalize how best we can address those issues. These are the things we thought better to address at this moment and see how best we can move forward. Thank you very much.
Yeah. No, thank you so much. We are also from ADB side, we're also working very closely with you and your team and supporting in various aspects of this. And then we look forward to working with you and your team as well. And because these are very, very important aspects of it. Before you can engage or you go far, we need to look at what are the pros and cons of the various options available as well. Good, thank you. So now let's move on to Bangladesh. Again, very encouraging to see that, of course, India and Bangladesh, the trade has been happening for a long time, and the ADB was also privileged to support, I think, two cross-border transmission lines in the past with Bangladesh. I think, and then I also noticed that, you are trying to do also with Nepal as well. So there's some good progress happening there. So hopefully that will materialize soon also. But Mr. Mondal, there's one question that always comes about this transmission capacity, because we have to go through India, and then there's transmission constraint between India and Bangladesh. There's always a kind of a bottleneck there. What are the government's plans of constructing new transmission lines or increasing the capacity, augmentation of the existing ones? What are your thoughts in Bangladesh right now?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. At first, I take the opportunity to say something about the scenario, renewable scenario and cross-border and the interconnection, something like that. Bangladesh achieved 100% electrification last year, and our generation capacity is more than 25 gigawatt, and out of which only 4.5% or 5% from renewable sources. But Bangladesh have as target and vision to achieve generate 40% electricity from renewable sources. So there's huge generation we required to achieve this target. Now, on generation capacity, it's almost 1 giga. We have to generate another 23 gigawatt by 2041. The huge investment is required for this purpose. And Bangladesh is a country, is a different situation other than the South Asian country. We are a flat country, no hydro potential, like Nepal and India and other countries. And Bangladesh is a country of a land constraint. And that's why the renewable, we have some potential, enormous potential in solar, but in other part, India has the huge opportunity, solar, wind, hydro, or something. We are importing power from India. You mentioned 2 cross-border connectivity. No, Bangladesh and India have 3 cross-border connectivity already have. We are in the process of discussing the more connectivity between India and Nepal and Bhutan also. There is a joint working group between India and Bangladesh. Also, Bangladesh and Nepal and Bangladesh and Bhutan. There is a decision. There was a decision in the last JWJC meeting, both in Nepal and India. Trilateral will be formed. That is between Bangladesh, India, and Nepal. Also Bangladesh, India, and Bhutan. And trilateral cooperation will be committee will be formed very soon. And the connectivity you asked, the connectivity between, we have the connectivity between India and Bangladesh, but we are trying to connectivity trilateral through the Nepal to Bangladesh through the India. We are discussing this issue, and we are also trying to connectivity, develop a connectivity through Bangladesh, to Bhutan, through India. There is a process of discussion, and in the last coordination meeting between India and Bangladesh, there is a consensus between the Bangladesh to India. There is a high voltage connectivity line, the 760 megawatt line from eastern part to western part of India. There is a process and discussion process. There is a possibility. I have already mentioned the lots of feasibility study, something like to be done to establish this connectivity. And our grid strengthening, you mentioned the grid strengthening. Obviously, if you introduce more renewable energy in our grid, we have to stabilize grid should be improved. And we should we have to done the feasibility analysis, how much renewable energy can be injected to our grid. In this perspective, the Asian Development Bank and other development partner can assist us to develop speedy develop the grid situation or interconnectivity between among the South Asian region. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one follow-up question to you, Mr. Mondal. How does Bangladesh look at this cross-border power trade? Is that for your energy security or to meet your renewable energy or climate change targets, or both?
Cross-border, we have I have already mentioned our master plan. Our import will be limited to 15%. That is out of 60,000 megawatt. Out of 60,000 megawatt, we have a plan to import 9,000 megawatt, 15%. This is the concern about the security and reliability. If we have the direct connectivity to the Bangladesh to Nepal and Bangladesh to Bhutan through the India, then Bangladesh may think to import more power from the import. We have the connectivity only India, no direct connectivity through Nepal, also Bhutan. If the direct connectivity can be developed, then Bangladesh may think to import more renewable energy from the region. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Parikh, you have been also very much involved in the policy dialogues with the various countries in the region. Have been also long experience working with these countries as well. So now we have other policymakers on the table. How do you see that that these countries should do things differently or should do more aggressively so that this power trade can enhance further?
How do these countries?
How these countries, let's say, because you have been involved in this discussion with these countries, right? So what would be your suggestion, recommendations, or wishes? Let's say if you were in the government, what would you have done?
Oh, surely, I think that's the whole idea. I presented more about these countries and said more about them than India, not because India is unimportant to me, or but it makes a less percentage change. But yeah, Nepal and Bhutan, as I showed, grow substantially they can have far more expansion of capacity if India imports and also imports further to Bangladesh. And as I said, carbon benefits I showed from India and Bangladesh, because otherwise Bangladesh would have to import coal and gas and other fuels, and right now it's even using diesel and fuel oil. So all of that can be avoided, and they can. I mean, India also has hydro, Arunachal Pradesh, and so on, and that also they are now agreeing to cross it. So that's what I said, trilateral trade. And with Sri Lanka, we have started to also do so that they can develop their wind power, which is substantial, particularly offshore. So certainly the neighborhood would have, as I said, just not only it's the and critical time to get these funds for their economy is one of the very critical aspect of this beyond over and above power sector. That at the time Bangladesh is growing very fast, its industrial growth is very high, and so is Nepal is growing, and Sri Lanka we'd like to. At that time, to get bogged down in making power plants for Bangladesh would not be as good as just getting it imported from India, whichever way, from whichever country it comes. By the way, once you know fully, the system is fully integrated, you don't know where it's coming from, India or Bangladesh or where. So you should not keep talking about regionalism, country nationalism too much. Straight away, there are power system logics which will operate, and one should try to improve that. And I think governments have a lot of role to create a atmosphere of trust for investors. Because investors should know that there is no risk in this investment, and one day this government or that government or this government pulls off the carpet and I am nowhere. So that this is a very so we should be seen as one with one desire and one goal, and that and not what I take from you and what this person takes. That's not the way. It's there. There are, let's develop systems, and systems will not recognize. It's a works on logic. So power market and earlier there was a fixed price and fixed contracts, so many megawatts at this price, and only export or only import. This is kind of thing was going on before 2012, and now it doesn't matter when you import, when you export. So it is, and this is particularly important for renewables. And in fact, all the people, tomorrow we are talking about Southeast Asia and Asia connectivity, South Asia connectivity. And there it's even more important that we all can go towards renewable actually only if we cooperate, because renewable is not something that's available all the time. And we need to support each other at a time when one person does not have, or one person does not have the electricity as and when it's available, and actually planned that way. It's not that they are accidental events, but foreseen events and foreseen solutions are there, and planned development is there, understanding, cooperation, which is there. So I do see that the cooperative uh, effort should be there at all levels, at the government, at investors, at power sector especially, and not think of, small gains here and there for my country, this country. It's the power systems rules that we have to obey. And fortunately, they are all fair. If not right now, for 1 second, for long term, and for so the fair trade is also important, and that can be guaranteed. There is no doubt about that. I think that is the main thing, that cooperative spirit. And investors have to be brought in, and that is why IRADE has done something like 150 events over this. We have met every types of stakeholders, planners, regulators, investors, and we have done 150 events and 40 reports, and looked at, called power distributors, trained them, took the people to abroad to see them how these work. And we, IRADE, also took them to South Africa to see how South Africa works, how Norway works. And then we give them training course where they can learn how to bid. So how operate, they should bid for power, and make some, how to operate power market. So power market is a very essential thing for this, which should keep, it would function as per the rules and not as per politics. So people can trust in it, and it has to be more responsible and responsive. Right now, it's 15 minutes we get a cleared price. It is actually far advanced than some of the developed countries even, and it should be cut down to even less, every 5 minutes. So one should know where it is coming from. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Parikh. So now we have about 10 minutes or so. I would like to open the floor for any questions. So let's collect. So let's collect maybe two or three questions, and then we'll respond to it. So yeah, please, maybe you can come to the mic or just introduce very briefly, and then. Yeah.
Thank you. Good morning. I am Alamgir. I'm from a company called EatCall from Bangladesh. Like any other trade, I think power trade is equally important, and I'm a great supporter of this regional trade in power. My question is regarding finance. One is, how do you finance this kind of huge investment, especially to the smaller countries like Nepal? And currency, I think that's another important topic of discussion, that whether we could have a common currency instead of dollar. Because recently we have seen there is a dollar crisis and payments can be a challenge. Thank you.
Please. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Siddiq Zubair again from Bangladesh. So, Ms. Jyoti Parekh raised a very vital question that, not the question, you uh, instigate one issue that sometimes politics can influence this power trade. So, do you think that uh, a regional power pool is better concept than this bilateral or multilateral power trade? Because most of the time, not only in this South Asian region, it also seen in other part of the world, that when there is a multilateral or bilateral trade of electricity, then there are sometimes politics overrule the business, you know. It's a long-term investment, it's a long-term contract. So to make it independent from the politics, is it better to have a independent regional power pool through which every country can do their justice to the pool and can contribute each other for the betterment of the region? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any one or two more questions, anybody? Yeah, please.
Thank you very much. I'm Dr. Sulakshan Jayawardena from Sri Lanka. In fact, Dr. explained a little bit about the carbon benefits. Now, my question is, we basically focus renewable energy development through this cross-border electricity trade. When it comes to the cross-border electricity trade and also renewable energy development, most of the renewable energy projects will be developed by the private sector based on the private sector investments. Now, the area like cross-border electricity trade, how we can claim either it is the right with the developer or the investor or the user, because one of the key concern area is carbon trading and also claiming carbon rights. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think now let me turn to the panelists to respond to some of these questions about this bringing investments, also single currency, and also this developing as a regional power pool. And also there are some questions received on the chat here about the role of regulators and system operators to facilitate that power trade, and your feedback and inputs on that one as well. Since we have only 5 minutes left, so what I also request is that I will just go one by one, and then you can also respond to some of these questions as appropriate. And also maybe emphasize a little bit on the capacity building needs in your respective countries in developing policies, guidelines, and also maybe attracting investment, private sector investment, and then anything that a development partner like ADB can also contribute to your efforts. So I think you can make that as your final concluding remarks, and we can close this one. So, sir, over to you first.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to little bit address this financial modalities for cross-border power trade. It is one of the challenges actually I was listing here to materialize the cross-border trade or building the infrastructures between the two countries. I give an example. We negotiated with India for long as to how to build the cross-border transmission line, second cross-border transmission line, that is Butawal Gorakhpur 400 kV transmission lines. And it took, years to force consensus on that. And finally, we came to a consensus to chalk out the appropriate financial modality. So if it is, cross-border transmission line between the two countries, both the countries should have their, shares and establish the joint venture company. And they should, of course, have the debt and equity ratio. But in equity ratio, for example, we have agreed 50% from Nepal and 50% from India. So remaining debt portion, the company, JV company will, be seeking from the development partners or commercial banks and all. So what I want to highlight is it's totally, between the countries who are being linked, so they can agree on the suitable modalities for them. I think we can find the common modality for all the cases. So we have to individually deal with the for the corresponding transmission line. Another question was again a challenge that I would going to raise here. At the technical level, we make agreements, we accept each other's conditions, and then we get prepared to trade power to other countries, agree totally on the bureaucracy at the technical level. And politicians also, when they go on visiting the countries, go on meeting, they build some consensus. But when we will be at the real point of, a time of making trade happen, then those political commitments somehow we see that they are deviated somehow in the interest of geopolitics or other strategies, strategic interest. So that's where we, should be getting supports from our politicians to, make power trade realized. And we, from the technical side, should also be knocking them constantly to materialize those, power trade. I think I could address those things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think some of the answers already given by the Dinesh also, then I am not touching. When it is come to the big challenge, everybody has been mentioned here about the financing, I think. We have 2 or 3 modalities has to be established, as by Dinesh also mentioned. If we can come up with some acceptable standard agreements or the modalities is easier for each countries. Otherwise, it will take longer time for the negotiation between 2 countries having the transmission line. That will allow us to move forward very quickly. In the same time, the safeguarding the both countries' right also has to be addressed. If the bilateral agencies and other development partners can help, it will further enhance the cooperation between the collaboration and the cooperation between the countries as well as the development partners as well. Most of the time that equity part also, then we are having problem how we can find the money also. That's why some countries may go with the private sector investment. And if it is a private sector investment come, then they need to some incentives to attract them for this kind of initiatives. Those kind of otherwise tax revenue or tax other incentive has to be given, or some transparency mechanism has to be established for them to get attract for this kind of initiative. As rightly mentioned by my colleagues also, the political and the geopolitical changes has to be addressed, and this is the struggle between the countries, but it can be resolved if we having the good understanding and the clear policies in place. The regulatory framework is I think we have to pay much attention how we can do the power trade between the countries and regional. The regulatory framework, it is established, I think it can be help all the countries to overcome these kind of challenges, how we can pay relevant generators as well as sharing between the cost for the transmission line also. I don't know whether it can be help for the independent power operator or somebody, but it has to be discussed among the countries. I think the two countries here in the Nepal and Bangladesh, I think they had some experience in this area. I think it will be better to share the experience among our countries and find the solution among ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Regarding private sector investment from Sri Lankan delegates, there is a huge opportunity to invest from private sector investment. In case of Bangladesh, we in the last couple of few months, most of the private sector investors are investing for renewable project. These are about 7,000 megawatt. Most of them are in private investor. And look at the cross-border trading. We are importing from Adani Power Plant. This is a private investor. In Jharkhand, we are importing power, this power plant. And another power plant in Nepal, under construction, the GMR Upper Karnali. It's also a private investor, and we are importing this power. He was private investor are interested to invest in renewable energy project. And regarding the regional power pool, Mr. Siddique Zubair, I agree with from the concept of Mr. Siddique Zubair. And in that case, the regional power pool, formation of regional power pool, that development partner like ADB can facilitate the form a regional power pool. Thank you. Thank you.
Same.
Very briefly.
So, yeah, I think the role of institutions is very big. As I said, it's for necessity for confidence building, and confidence is needed for people, so many countries to sit together and rely on such an important commodity as power. And nobody is safe if somebody pulls the rug from below. Therefore, institutions, in fact, last 2 years, we spent just doing that. Institutions for managing power systems, institutions for, investors, forum for regulators and for, training of the grid operators. So these are the system-based changes that we try to do. And these are necessary because there is a lot of risks here. The political risk, we are all for democracy. I mean, all 6 of us perhaps are democracies, and somewhere or the other election is always taking place, and new leaders should know that this is not his regime domain so much right now, and things should operate on their own. That way, and it's not that talking to Bangladesh needs power, it starts talking to Nepal, but much more like, okay, Nepal wants to build a power plant. How much capital will India put? How much capital will Bangladesh put? And how can Nepal do? And so it's talking to the pool itself, and let's do, okay, system has to grow this much. And it's not the power of one country or the other, it's the regional power that has to grow. And certainly at some point, you have your own people to answer to, but still how the pool should get large, and that's where our ADB funds were spent to show that this 400 gigawatt pool that we are operating on it now together for all of us, maybe 410 or 15, has to grow up to 2,000. How can we do this? So together, let's work on that goal. And then again, with that 2,000 has to be spread over many other issues and so on. And one has to be kept in mind, keep in mind that once you have power, you start developing other sectors. The way it happened in Bhutan, of course, before around started from 2000 onwards, Bhutan and India were doing only bilaterals that time. But they used first money to build the roads, to build the power plants, and then the money were used to build airports, roads, and tourism, and hotels, and so on. So then now they have another source of tourism. So it's not the power source alone which got them this affluence. So and same with Bangladesh. Money that goes to build power plants in their country is going for their industrialization, and they are importing, instead of fuel, they import electricity, and they progress. So all countries have a different and more logical pathway for suited to their developing their own resource, rather than everybody trying to do their own power plants. So and there should be some understanding of this as a common goal, and that is why I would say, I especially pointed out these three things, that it's not government to government. Let's leave the governments. The governments are needed to say, okay, you continue, and that they all have done. In fact, power is always the issue when two prime ministers meet, whether it is Nepal's prime minister or Bangladeshi prime minister who come to India, they talk power. So that's settled. Once that's settled, then you should start talking about institutions and make it strong and with common goals. And unless we have common goals, pulling things here and there for my purpose will not get us very far. And I find that more and more renewables, suppose India puts so much solar, then how is it going to work at night? So we will need power for night from this. So I thought, I saw that one.
No, that is double. Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt. So I have already taken 10 minutes of your coffee break. I'm really sorry for not managing the time very well, but just the 2-3 points that I wanted to mention is that this power trade or regional cooperation is a time-consuming process. We cannot just expect overnight results. So I think what is important is that we should continue engaging with the countries or with our partners on a regular basis, and then try to understand their situation and also try to push your situation and your arguments as well. I think that is the best way of moving forward in this regional cooperation. And we do need to have patience in pursuing these initiatives. And then at the end of the day, we need to find a solution where everybody wins. So that is also very important there. From ADB side, we have been talking, and then you will also hear that in a number of ways, that this regional cooperation and integration, RCI, in the energy sector is a very, very high priority, as Sujata mentioned in her welcome remarks. We have ongoing programs in the investment and also in the technical assistance, especially under the SASEC work, and we're also supporting the preparation of the master plan for BIMSTEC region as well. So investment, capacity building, and so on. So these are the various activities that we are supporting, and we'll continue doing it in all of these countries as well. So we'll be reaching out to all of you, and then we have an existing relationship, and we'll continue that in the coming days and years as well. So with that, first of all, let me thank all the panelists for accepting our invitation to come here and also share your thoughts and suggestions. And then again, we really appreciate your valuable inputs and insights on this one. And we look forward to working with all of you in moving this forward. And to all the participants, thank you so much for coming and also joining very actively this session. And then this is just the beginning. We'll have a quick coffee break, and then please come back at 10:30. And then here, then we'll have a second round of discussion with the champions. I think they'll be much more aggressive there. So please come back at 10:30. So thank you so much once again.
Good morning. I'd request our panelists for this session to please come. Mr. Kulderman Gishing, Mr. Rohan from Sri Lanka, Nazmun Where is Nazmun? Yeah, from Bangladesh. And Adil? Yeah, come. From Bangladesh, yeah. So just a small introduction for all our esteemed panelists. Mr. Kulman Gishing is the Managing Director of Nepal Electricity Authority, the utility in Nepal, which deals with generation, transmission, and distribution. So it's a single utility. Mr. Rohan Seneviratne, who's the General Manager, Ceylon Electricity Board. Ceylon Electricity Board is similarly the single utility for Sri Lanka, dealing with generation, transmission, and distribution. Although there's one more company, which is Lanka Electric Company, LICO, which is to a small part of, small portion of that. Then Nazmun Nahar, who's Senior Project Officer Energy from Bangladesh Resident Mission in the Asian Development Bank in Bangladesh. And Mr. Adil Chaudhry, who's the Superintending Engineer, Planning Grid Company of Bangladesh. So this session is the session of champions, but I think it's the way you take it. There are champions in every field. There were champions in policy earlier, but I think this is champions of nuts and bolts, of getting into more details about the session that we have, Power Trade for Carbon Neutral Asia. What we'll do is that we will, so Power Trade, just a small introduction. Power Trade, I feel, after I've done studies, after we've done detailed studies, is a win-win situation for all countries. It helps every country. In terms of, just like trade, any commodity of trade helps every nation. From places where one nation is competent or has more resources of one item, and so they can export that and import something which they need, and some other country has a surplus of or competence at. So this is the general philosophy of trade, which is also holds for electricity. So why has electricity not been traded as much as other commodities are? So one of the basic things, it's a capital intensive, it's very capital intensive, and the infrastructure actually crosses boundaries and stays there. For example, a cross-border transmission system stays there. Whereas if car is being imported, then the factory is in that country, that the cars, only the commodity comes here. But here the carrier infrastructure actually stays there for 25 years, 30 years, 50 years. So that's something where certain apprehensions are with some of the countries about what happens in case the relations of the two countries, sour at a later stage. But I'd just like to tell you that the generation which is there, for example, in Nepal and Bhutan, that's hydro predominantly. If they build a capacity, if that is not traded during the monsoon months, then it gets lost. It's zero cost energy, which is just lost. Because the hydro is a seasonal source. So during the low inflow season, that country does have to import, because that's not enough. It's a seasonal source. So that's why it's during the off season these countries import, and during the high monsoon season they export. So it's a win-win opportunity for trade in both ways, which is happening in these countries. Similarly, countries which are rich in solar and wind, everyone, all of us are moving towards renewable sources of energy for decarbonization. And it's a win-win situation there, where it's in case there is surplus electricity for solar or wind in one country, that would get curtailed, it would get lost if it is only to be used in that country. But if it could be sold to another country, then it doesn't get lost. So it's again zero cost energy, which is usefully utilized in other countries. So there are a lot of other benefits, because if sharing of reserves, because if a unit trips, then you don't need to be totally self-sufficient. You can get that power, which would be for a short time, from another country which has. So you share the reserves. Otherwise, there's a norm of having around 15% reserves in each country above the peak demand. So you may not need that much reserves. And when you don't need to build that capacity, there is again carbon reduction, carbon emission reduction, because you don't manufacture that. You don't need to manufacture that. Any manufacturing process needs energy, so that carbon emissions are also saved. Also, there are lots of other benefits of optimal utilization of resources. So in a nutshell, it's optimization of resources in the country. And since it is highly capital intensive, there's a huge saving in terms of millions and millions of dollars. So that's just with that background. We'll start this where I'll start with Mr. Kulman Ghishing, who's the Managing Director of Nepal Electricity Authority, to give his views. I'll request everyone to talk up to 10 minutes or give a presentation up to 10 minutes in the initial phase. And then we'll have lots of questions and questions from the audience. Thank you.
Thank you. When you talk about cross-border trade, I think three important aspects we have to think. That first is to meet the regional demand, how we can meet the regional demand with the optimum utilization of the resources. And the second important thing that we have not discussed in the previous session is the optimization of the price of electricity also. When we utilize the resources optimally, that optimizes the prices of the electricity within the region. That is the very important part of the trade. And the last part that this topics also says that to meet the climate change targets. So these three important aspects that we have to look into for the cross-border trade. Regarding cross-border trade between Nepal and India, we have been exercising trade with India since 2008. 2008, we have commercial cross-border trade started, but since 1971, we have power exchange between cross-border trade with the state of India, Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. We had been trading with the state government of India, but commercially we have started from 2008 with PTC India, and then NBVN, and there are many bilateral contracts we have signed for short term. And from 2021, we have started this day-ahead market also. In that day-ahead market, we have many trading yearly and monthly and daily basis. The trade has benefited both the countries. I think not only, as Mr. Pankaj said, that trade has benefited both the countries. We have the potential of 83,000 megawatt. Economically, it's 42,000 megawatt of hydro potential. We have already exploited around 2,800 megawatt, and there are many projects, around 10,000 megawatts projects are under pipeline, and around 5,000 megawatt projects are under construction. So when we talk about trade, the most important part is the cross-border transmission line. Transmission line, without transmission line, we cannot build, we cannot think of the trade. So cross-border transmission line, and not only cross-border transmission line, internal transmission line within the countries. These are very, very important to have the trade between the countries. So my suggestion or our discussion should be focused on building the more and more cross-border transmission line before we discuss the cross-border trade. When we have more transmission line connectivity, then we can discuss, we can have more cross-border trade. Between Nepal and India, we have more and more cross-border transmission line under construction. And we have cross-border transmission line with state government of in India, Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, around 9 circuits of 132 kV transmission lines are also under operation. I think between Bangladesh and India, more transmission line has to be built. I think the positive signs has been seen that more and more 765 kV transmission lines are being implemented. So cross-border transmission line, when we build, then the trade can happen. So trade, regional trade and sub-regional trade is very important. First, let's have more bonding or more integrated trade between the countries. And then we can jump to trilateral and multilateral. Thank you.
Thank you. So what she points out is that half your time is over, not that your full time is over. So it's 10 minutes for, she just warns you or gives you a signal that's 5 minutes, and you can speak longer, just a little caution. Okay, anyway, we'll get more time for discussions then. And I think you also point out when about 1 minute is left, right? 2 minutes, okay. So these are the two signals. Right. So now I'd like request Rohan from General Manager from Ceylon Electricity Board, which is, as I said, the utility, integrated utility for Sri Lanka, to please give his, he'd like to make a presentation, I believe, right? Okay, thanks.
Very good morning to all of you. I'm Rohan Seneviratne, the General Manager of Ceylon Electricity Board, which is the national power utility in Sri Lanka. First of all, let me extend my sincere gratitude to Asian Development Bank and the organizers of this conference for inviting me for this particular session. I will try to discuss on carbon neutral South Asia, especially referring to Sri Lankan perspective in my presentation. As you all are aware, Sri Lanka is a small country located closer to India, and Sri Lanka is 100% electrified. Everyone has access to electricity, and 24/7 power supply is available in Sri Lanka at this moment of time. Okay. My organization, it is called
Ceylon Electricity Board. It's a vertically integrated power utility. We do generate, transmit, and distribute about 80% of our power to 7 million customers in the country. Sri Lanka has installed capacity of about 4,700 megawatts at present, and out of which about 2,917 megawatts are coming from renewable power plants of 339. Out of these 339 renewable power plants, 320 power plants are owned by the private sector. So we encourage private sector participation in the power generation long time ago. The roof solar also contribute immensely to our power generation. And last year we recorded about approximately 700 megawatt of power generation from roof solar. Our day demand is only approximately 2,000 megawatts. So we introduce innovative business models to bring roof solar into practice. And we introduced 3 business models, the net metering and the net accounting and the net plus business models. Those business models contributed immensely to promote roof solar in Sri Lanka. When you compare with the total installed capacity against the renewable capacity is about 62%. If you look at the generation capacities, that is the energy-wise, Sri Lanka generated 52% of its electrical energy requirement last year from renewable sources. And in the year 2021, it was 51% we did generate from renewable power sources. If you take the world average of renewable power generation is about 26%. So we are much ahead the world average. So if you take the total energy scenario in the world, the renewable energy generation is approximately 11%. So 5% is coming from nuclear power. So when we go for net zero targets by 2050, it's an enormous challenge for everyone in the world. So now let us see the policies, key policies adopted by the government of Sri Lanka. The first policy is to achieve 70% of electricity generation in the country using renewable sources by the year 2030. The second policy is achieve carbon neutrality in power generation by 2050. Third one is cease building new coal power plants in future. The fourth is new addition of firm capacity should be from clean energy sources such as liquid natural gas. Now in our program from 2023 to 2030 program, we have divided it into two sections. The first section is 2023 to 2026, and the next stage is from 2026 to 2030. Now, in order to achieve this target, we have done a lot of planning studies because that is very essential. So development of long-term generation expansion plans, renewable integration studies, and so many plans we have completed. And based on these plans, we have finalized the plan for 2030 to achieve 70%. So in the 70% energy mix in 2030, we have only 10% from natural gas and 20% from coal. And all the other things are from renewable sources. So that is our plan for 2030. In order to achieve this plan, we have to construct about 5,700 megawatts of renewable power plants from 2030 up to 2030 from 2023 onwards. To do that, as I said before, we developed two plans, first plan 2023 to 2026 and the second plan 2027 to 2030. So both plans have been completed and approved by the government of Sri Lanka. So as for the first plan from 2023 to 2026, we have to construct about 2,690 megawatts of renewable power plants before 2026. So in this 2,600 power plants, about 1,000 megawatt of power plants will be large ones, mainly large solar, large wind, and certain hydropower plants and so on. So those are big ones, approximately above 100 megawatts power plants. But in our business models, we have the small ones as well. The roof solar will contribute about 600, and the small 1 to 10 megawatt power plants will contribute another 100 megawatts. So this particular plan from 2023 to 2026 is a low-hanging fruits. It's a low-cost plan because we don't want the transmission network to be improved that much to bring this power of 2,500 before 2026. The existing transmission and distribution capacities are more or less sufficient to bring or integrate this approximately 2,500 megawatts. And also in our business models, we normally incorporate the last mile transmission construction also with the developer. So that developer will do the plant as well as the last mile transmission construction works. The next plan is more challenging, 2027 to 2030, because we are going beyond 60%. We want to reach 60% by 2026. And from 2027 to 30, we are going beyond 60%. When you go beyond 26%, I think as you all are aware, a lot of technical and operational challenges will come, stability issues will come, the RE curtailment management issues will come. So this will be the curtailment if you don't have battery storage after 2026. So we have to go for enormous capacities of battery storage to manage this. So we have completed this plan as well, 2027 to 2030, and we have to get about 3,000 megawatts during these 4 years. So it is coming from northern part of Sri Lanka, and then Mannar region, then the eastern part of Sri Lanka, and then the southern part of Sri Lanka. So we have identified all the requirements from different areas for this plan. And also we have to construct about 825 megawatts of battery storage to accommodate these large quantities of renewable power. The transmission network, which is 400 kV transmission network, is required to accommodate this plan for 2027 to 2030 because large quantities of renewable power has to be brought to load centers. As far as investment is concerned, this project is 11 billion rupee project from $11 billion project from 2023 to 2030. So the first ones, up to 2026, the private sector will have to construct the plants. It will cost about $2.5 billion. And the next one, that is from 2027 to 2030, private sector once again will have to construct the power plants. That will be about $5 billion. So altogether, $7 billion should come from private sector participation by putting up solar and mainly wind power plants. But for battery storage and the other storage like the pump storage, those also will cost about $3 billion. And also the transmission improvements will cost about another $1.6 billion. So altogether, it is a $11 billion project that we are envisaging from 2023 to 2030. And we have also discussed the Sri Lanka-India interconnection, which should be in operation by 2030 early. So that is our plan. This project started a long time ago. I can give more details when we have the panel discussion. Started 20 years ago without much progress. But last year, we have reached significant progress. So as per the Sri Lanka-India interconnection, we are supposed to bring 500 megawatts of power by 2030 and another 500 megawatts of power in 2034. So that is our plan. So we have signed a MOU with Government of India and the PG Power Grid Corporation India. And last year we have done a lot of works, and also we had discussions with the BIMSTEC countries on how we can transfer or cross-border transfer of electricity. Now we are in the mature stage, and we are in the process of finalizing the technical aspects. 90% of the technical aspects have already been completed, and also we are doing the commercial aspects. PwC India is supporting us through the Asian Development Bank for those studies. Those studies also will be finished in next month. So after that, we will have firm discussions with the stakeholders to sign these cross-border agreements. So once we sign the cross-border agreements, I think in the 2030 plan, we are trying to get about 6% of energy mix from renewable sources from India. So that will cut down the battery storage requirement by about 500 megawatts and also the renewable energy requirement by about 500 megawatts. So my last one slide, uh, go back to the previous one. So to go for these large quantities of renewable energy, so many things have to be done. First, the planning studies and the feasibility studies are very important. Then the appropriate policies and the strategies are very essential. Then RE development capacities, we have to do it very properly. The resource assessments and the identification of RE projects has to be done. Then we have to facilitate the private sector to bring all these required capitals. And also firm capacity is very essential to have large quantities of renewable energy. Therefore, we have to look for firm capacity power plants like liquid natural gas. And lastly, we have to go for transmission development projects along with these projects to accommodate these requirements. And utility scale battery storage is a must, and pump storage also has to come, and the smart grid concept has to have this particular integration, and demand response schemes as well, and also the restructuring of the power sector. So going for 70% is a huge challenge. So we are geared to do that, and we are trying hard to achieve this target by 2030. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Rohan, for a comprehensive presentation and giving an overview of Sri Lanka's plans. That was very comprehensive, and we'll come to questions later. Now I'll request Adil to give a little more details about Bangladesh plans in line with the policy portion which was mentioned by the Joint Secretary in Bangladesh.
Thank you very much. I am Adil Chaudhary. I am working as a system planner of the Power Grid Company of Bangladesh Limited, but my majority time was spent in system operation. So I am a system operator guy also. So what happened? Bangladesh is a developing country, and it has a strong determination to become a middle class country by 2031 and a developed country by 2041. The government has to work a lot for accessing electricity, 100% electricity to all, and it is already achieved. But the quality of the electricity and reliability is not ensured. So the present vision of the government is like universal access to the quality electricity in a cost-effective and affordable manner. So this is our main target right now. So if I introduce first our power system, our previous presenter already discussed that our installed capacity is around 25 gigawatt, where the maximum demand is around 16 gigawatt. But most of the power in last 10 years is coming from natural gas, domestic natural gas, but the reserve is going down now. So we are now focusing on the imported fuel like LNG, coal, and other things. And our fuel mix, the natural gas is right now 50%, and then the liquid fuel is around 30%, and we have coal-based plant over 10%, and rest of the power coming from import and renewable energy. The renewable penetration is less than 5% now, which is not up to the mark, but government is paying more attention for the new and renewable energy. The last 10 years, the growth in the power sector was more than 10%. And in last 5 years, it has been 300 times than the before. So in 2009, it was around 4,000 megawatt system. Now it is more than 16 gigawatt system. So it has been shown a great expansion in not only generation, also in transmission as well as the distribution. In the private participation in generation is almost 50%. So it is a good sign. And for cross-border power trading, Bangladesh has already established power trading with India. At present, it is importing. We have 3 corridors. First one, we have a back-to-back HVDC link with India. The capacity of the HVDC block is 1,000 megawatt, 2 blocks. But the line capacity is more than that. It is 2,400 megawatt. We have 4 circuits. So N-1 contingency criteria, it will be 2,400 megawatt. So we have some reserve capacity in the transmission line. We can improve it if it is another block of HVDC can be connected. Another link, it is radially connected to the Indian grid, where the capacity is around 1000 megawatt, but we are importing only 160 megawatt. That is 160 megawatt load is separated from the Bangladesh grid and it is synchronized with the Indian system. If in case there is an interruption, we can change over this load to the Bangladesh grid. And we have another mode, like the power station is located in India and it is synchronous with the Bangladesh grid. So these three type of interconnection right now we have in our system, but it is only the bilateral mode. But the government is now trying to move from bilateral to trilateral move, and more interconnection is very important. And also we are focusing on the synchronous interconnection around this region. India has already connected with Nepal and Bhutan. In Bhutan, they are already synchronously connected, and Nepal, they are going to have 100% synchronous connection very soon. But the problem is that Indian system is comparatively very large. It is the biggest synchronous connection in the world, and where the Bangladesh and other SAARC country has a small to medium system. Like we have around 25 gigawatt system, where Pakistan and has around 40 gigawatt system, and rest of the country is around 5,000 and below. So it is like a small power plant for Nepal and Bhutan. The capacity is like 500 to 2,000 megawatt. But when you connect a moderate power system like 25 gigawatt to a very large system, lot of technical issue, contractual issue, and sometimes it is cannot avoid it, the geopolitics is there. Every country want to have a energy security. They can how much dependency they can afford to other countries. That is one question. And how much reserve we can actually afford. That is the spinning reserve and non-spinning reserve. Because when there is interruption in any power system or any interconnection, it should not be more than 10%, so that your frequency and other things must not go in the level from where any blackout or partial blackout can happen. So one of the most solution is that the multiple interconnection. So we are looking for this. We are asynchronously connected with India. We are trying to have more interconnection and synchronous interconnection with India. Again, with Nepal, we have already in a final position to sign a agreement, PSA agreement with Nepal. The power station will be private participation from the Indian company and located in Nepal. The power will come through Indian grid. So it will be another mode of interconnection. And Bangladesh is always in a position that we are going to have investment in Nepal for hydropower generation. So we are discussing with the Nepalese authority in JSC and JWC forum, and hopefully it will be happen. And similarly, we are trying to establish some interconnection and with the Bhutan also. So if we have multiple interconnection with Nepal, Bhutan and India that already have, then we can say it is a sub-regional power system. And Bangladesh can be a gateway between South Asia and Southeast Asia, or Asian countries, because we have border with Myanmar, and Myanmar can be connected, will be connected very soon with Thailand and also the Asian grid like Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos. If we can establish this BIMSTEC grid or Asian and South Asian grid, then we can have the luxury of using the seasonal variation as well as the time variation, because the time difference in that region will be more than 2 hours. So we can easily offset our peak demand with the neighboring country if it is extended from east to west, not from south to north to south. So it will be very prospective plan if we can establish the Asian grid along with the South Asian grid. Then we can actually have the real benefit of having the cross-border interconnection, and spinning reserve requirement will be lower, and we can actually give the power to our people in a cost-effective manner. Thank you very much from my side.
Thank you, Adil. That was also very comprehensive talk about the Bangladesh system, its plans and challenges. Now I'd request Nazmun, who is the ADB representative in Bangladesh, to give her views.
Thank you, Pankaj, for the opportunity to be on the stage today. So the context was very well said by the previous session by the presenters and Jiwan this morning. And we have had very good presentations representing the Bangladesh situation and also complemented by Adil. So I'll briefly touch upon the overview and then ADB's complementarities or ADB's contributions, and in future how we can contribute more. So South Asia has immense potential of CBET, especially from hydropower. So total potential is 350 gigawatt among the neighboring countries. And in Bangladesh, IEPMP, currently it is under preparation. It will be coming up by June or July latest. Currently, the Bangladesh has the Power System Master Plan 2016 that has projected a target of up to 9,000 megawatt power import from Nepal, Bhutan, and neighboring countries by 2041. Though at that time, when Power System Master Plan 2016 was being prepared, at the time Bangladesh was experiencing huge power deficit and demand supply gap. So back in 2009, when the demand supply gap was more than 3,000 megawatt, ADB could quickly respond to the need of the government in financing the first interconnection through Veramara that facilitated interchanging of trading of 500 megawatt. Later on, it was upgraded in 2016 to another 500 megawatt. So, having said so, it always has to be bottom up. So, need has to be generated from the ground among the countries. We have noted that there are regional complementarities in terms of supply-demand gap. In Nepal, in the summertime and in the monsoon time, there is surplus, whereas at the same time, in Bangladesh, that is the most hot time, meaning that they require power at that time. So all these conducive environments had always been there, but still there was nothing significant happened since from 2016 to till date. So this means that during this time, all these countries, the generating countries in Nepal and Bhutan, they were also working on the strengthening of internal TNT networks. Bangladesh was also strengthening its internal TNT networks. Right now, due to the global conflicting situation, we are again in a time when Bangladesh is experiencing the power crisis again. The supply-demand gaps are again starting to appear in terms of load shedding. So I believe that this is again the right time where the need are there. So currently, we have already identified from the presentation of Mr. Nirod this morning that there are need for technical due diligences as well as long-term environmental impact assessments. And these are the areas where the multilateral development banks can collaborate. If there is specific need for environmental impact assessment for large hydropower plants with international common rivers, then ADB should be ready, or the other multilateral banks should be ready to finance such studies. And in the future, very soon, when the countries will be totally ready for truly multilateral power trade, then ADB and the multilateral banks will be also ready to finance those infrastructural needs. Having said so, ADB has its SASEC master plan, and very recently we have already also received a request from BIMSTEC to update the master plan. So that is under preparation. By July, the BIMSTEC master plan will be ready. After that, we hope that the need of the ground will be more clear and we can identify what are some specific financing need. I'll stop here to facilitate, to allow more time for the actual discussion. Thank you, Pankaj.
Thank you, Nazma. Now I'll ask some questions to the panelists, and of course then throw open the question and answer session to the house over here, to the floor. Mr. Geshing, I remember when I think a few years back when we were not strong, when Nepal was not or was seeking permission to export to India. And the permission was it was not granted by that time. It was in July, I think, which is the peak monsoon period in, and so the rivers of Nepal were overflowing without being used. You know, it was free energy getting lost, which, so I saw lines on Mr. Gishing's forehead. We were interacting over there, worried that, you know, they could have gained money, they could have gained revenue from this. And thankfully it has happened. We're happy that it has happened. And now Nepal is selling power in the power exchange. In fact, it has benefited both the countries. The Indian Power Exchange was already existing since 2008, and so it was pretty mature. Whereas in other countries, this power markets were not there. But it was a good opportunity because power markets present an opportunity that you can sell power for as little as 15 minutes duration, or buy power for 15 minutes duration, as and when you have surplus or deficit. So it's a huge opportunity, and there's no fixed charge in that. When you buy electricity, you pay for that. If you don't buy, you don't pay anything. Whereas in long-term contracts, there's a commitment charge you have to pay even if you don't use that electricity. So that's the advantage of a power market, which he mentioned was the day-ahead market, which is in the power exchange. So now, of course, things have happened. We have, of course, a capacity of 1,000 megawatts in the existing Dhalkebar-Muzaffarpur line, which is presently carrying, I think, allowed to carry up to 600 megawatt, right? If I'm not mistaken. When are you? Because it is because of the constraint in the Nepal side, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that if that internal transmission system develops, then it can import more power, or maybe it's not needed. So, Mr. Gishing, would you like to respond to that? And what is your plan to export power during the high inflow season, say in about a year's time? Yeah.
We are exporting power from Dhalkebar from last 2 seasons, I think. And this year we'll be exporting not 600, 800 megawatt. We have already started exporting power from Dhalkebar. It's 400 kV line. It is the capacity is more than 1,000 megawatt. And not only Dhalkebar, we are also exporting from another point, Tanakpur, up to 70 megawatt. And there are 9 circuits of 132 kV line with the state grid of Bihar and UP. So the capacity may be 400 to 500 megawatt. So total capacity we can go up to 1,200 to 1,300 megawatt for export. So this year we are targeting around 1,000 to 1,200 megawatt export. We have already started exporting the quantum. The quantum will slowly increase day by day. The trading, this is win-win situation. Why we are saying this is at this stage, sometimes some block of time we are importing also in peak time, and night time and daytime we are exporting. So import and export is happening. So we are getting some amount with the prices that we get at the peak time also. So this is very a win-win proposition. And we are planning to have more and more medium-term and long-term contracts also. We have almost concluded around 200 megawatt 5-year contract, and another 300 megawatt for long-term 25 years contract. And there are many projects we are planning for long-term and short-term, medium-term. Last time, our Prime Minister, 2 Prime Ministers, during the visit of our Prime Minister, there is a long-term trade agreement. As per that, within 10 years, 10,000 megawatt can be imported by India from Nepal. So not only daily day-ahead market, long-term and medium-term market also we are going for, and that will enhance more trade. And with Bangladesh also, I think now very short period of time, I think within 2-3 months, this wet season itself, we are trying to export up to 40 megawatt or 50 megawatt power from Nepal to Bangladesh. It's a symbolic that we can trade. It's a symbolic, but that can be increased slowly with the enhancement of cross-border transmission line between India and Bangladesh and Bangladesh and Nepal. We are trying to have more study on between Bangladesh and Nepal cross-border transmission line, that how many transmission lines can be feasible for interconnecting Bangladesh from Nepal. So these are the scenario that that will enhance more trade of renewable energy, hydropower from Nepal to Bangladesh.
Thank you. Just one or two follow-up questions. One was just to give a context for everyone. The prices in power exchange for the last 2 years have been high. So because of the Ukraine crisis, the energy crisis, so it has affected fuel prices of coal as well as gas. Therefore, there has been a little bit of expensive power now in India because of this. And so the export of hydropower from Nepal during the peak period of India comes as a boon to India also, as well as gets a lot of revenue for Nepal because the prices are high in the power exchange. But this could be a temporary phase. Maybe when the fuel crisis eases, the prices will come down again. And therefore, Nepal is looking for longer term agreements, which is long term or medium term, so that they have stable revenue, higher revenue over a longer period. So that's the intention, just to give you a context of that. So my question is that what is being planned is a 40 megawatt trial, it's like a pilot of export from Nepal to Bangladesh through India. Because there's already an agreement or a MOU to buy 500 megawatt from GMR power project in Nepal. So this would be a test case of power trilateral contract. Trilateral contracts are important because it has certain issues which have to be sorted out, which is what happens when the project in Nepal that trips, but Bangladesh continues to draw power because it's not instantaneous communication. How do you deal with that situation? How do you deal with the situation if the Bangladesh line trips and the Nepal power station keeps generating? How do you do that treatment? So these are certain issues which will get sorted out through the trilateral agreements which would happen for this contract. So it's a good thing that this is starting, so that will ease out the situation when longer term or high megawatt contracts come. My question is that you mentioned about direct connection. I don't know if you meant direct connection between Nepal and Bangladesh through India, or you meant through the Indian grid. So I just want a clarification. Did you mean there should be a direct line between Bangladesh and Nepal and Bangladesh, or was it through the Indian grid?
Both. I think we are going to study the through Indian grid. Through Indian grid also. I think it will be just like a direct connection. If we can have a certain pooling stations in India and connected from Bangladesh and India, and direct from Nepal to Bangladesh also. There are certain points we have found out. I think that will require the consent from India also. That will be the shortest point to connect from Bangladesh to Nepal. It's around 30 kilometer or 40 kilometer. So it's very near border. So both the cases we are studying, and I think we have to get consensus from India.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's basically left to the governments. But I just like to point out that if there is a direct line which is dependent, on which power flow is dependent, and if that line trips, then zero power will flow through that. But if it is through an Indian grid, which is meshed grid, which is there is n-1 criteria in planning, so you can have multiple connections between Nepal and India and Bangladesh. So if one line trips, it's not going to affect the power flow. So that's from that point of view, I think it's a more reliable connection. There could be also another thing about having a line in another country's territory, which is under jurisdiction of another country, is sometimes going to be a little challenging because of security issues and many others. But I'm just suggesting it's the governments who will basically decide. I'm just saying the challenges that may come due to this. So that's just a response. Maybe you could think about it, right? Similarly, the other connection, which again was between India, Bangladesh, and again to India, a similar sort of situation would be there. If an Indian line goes through Bangladesh from one end and comes out to the other end, that challenge of who that line belongs to when it is in Bangladesh is going to be a challenge. So a suggestion would be that the ownership of that line within Bangladesh should be with Bangladesh, and because it's in their territory, and the one which is in Indian territory could be owned by India, but it would be operated in a coordinated way. I mean, that's one suggestion. It's just thought-provoking, I think, because hope it helps to arrive at a consensus, because this is what platforms like this are for, to move ahead, right? So those can be thought of. Or of course, what could happen is that the ownership could belong to another country, but the operation and maintenance contract could be given to that country where it is. It would be easier that way, because it's a little challenging for getting into territory of another country and operating and maintaining that. Anyway, these are things of just thought-provoking questions, and maybe the
Well, even if direct connection, no, between within the country of India, I think somebody from India, they can operate and they can construct. That's it. This line will be direct, but that portion of the transmission line may be Power Grid will operate, Power Grid will build.
Right.
That can be.
So that's a viable thing. You're saying that this portion could be owned, although it could be a direct line. That's one way of doing it. The only thing is that, as I said, that if it is a single line which is connecting, if that line trips, then zero power flow happens. But if it is connected through a meshed grid, through multiple connections, there are many paths through which it can flow. So that from the reliability point of view, maybe that other would be better. Also, it's not that the transmission charges which are there in India are point of connection charges. So it depends on the. It's not that you keep on adding the line charges. It would be more expensive if you have a dedicated line between the two countries, because the entire cost would have to be borne by those two countries. But if it's a meshed connection, then that's point of connection charges. The charges are shared because it's a shared the line. The power through that is shared by many countries. Okay, just thought I'll bring that right now. Let me go to Adil. You. So this, I mean, one of the things which you also mentioned, which direct connection, is now been discussed already. So I'll not get into that. But the previous panel also talked about this, about the land shortage for renewable sources in Bangladesh. Now there's certain suggestions which we, I mean, there are plans in India we already have in India, canal top solar, so which it doesn't use land. It uses a cover over canals, over water bodies, floating solar, and it could even be road top solar. So there is in the policy, the new policy which is in the draft stage in India for having road top solar PV plants, because it doesn't use land again, and the additional benefit is it shelters the road. It also uses the cars would use less fuel consumption in summer because it shelters that, it protects the road. So I think there are multiple benefits. Maybe Bangladesh can think of that. I think the Joint Secretary is not here presently. So, but I just thought that I'll point that out about shortage of land. Just some ideas which I thought we can share. Some knowledge sharing would help in
You
that.
pointed the right thing, and Bangladesh already have taken initiative for rooftop solar, and as our IEPMP, Integrated Energy and Power Master Plan, we have targeted like around 4,000 to 5,000 megawatt from rooftop solar, because we have enough. The industrial growth is now in a very rapid rate, and government has taken 100 special export import zone, actually industrial zone, where we are targeting for rooftop solar. And also the floating solar, already we have piloting one floating solar. We are now looking at how, does it have enough impact with the fisheries. If it is not, then we'll go for a large scale floating solar. Because in Bangladesh, one of the major source of nutrition is the fish, and it is the sweetwater fish. So it is already taken initiative. And also we have installed one onshore wind farm that is around 60 megawatt. If we find it economically viable, and we have already planned for around 10,000 megawatt onshore and offshore wind. And we have find some potential that we can actually explore. So the rooftop solar, floating solar, and wind is our main, will be the main sources of the renewable energy in Bangladesh.
So I just wanted to add, as I said, canal tap solar and road top solar.
Yeah, and again, it actually increases the efficiency of the solar panel. If there is some fluid underneath the solar panel, it actually reduces the temperature of the solar cell, and per degree centigrade, it will increase actually 0.15% of the efficiency. So we had already introduced a solar irrigation system, and it can be very helpful if this panel is situated over the canals for the irrigation. It will, and also we have taken an initiative for solar panel with shrimp farm. So it can also increase the productivity of both shrimp and also the solar power. So thank you.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, Nazma.
To complement with this question of the canal top and road top solar, as Adil mentioned that the first piloting of the floating solar 800 kilowatt was done by ITCOL very recently, and we are still learning from this piloting. We will be happy to see that the IEPMP, Integrated Power and Energy Master Plan, we have seen the draft final report made by JICA, and it projected by 6 gigawatt from the renewables. So a good part of it is contributed by the solar irrigation, because currently there are in Bangladesh there are 1.4 million diesel operated pumps. So that are proposed to be, some part of it are going to be replaced by solar irrigation pumps, and for that the solar irrigation roadmap is being prepared and being finalized. So these are some of the contemporary initiatives in parallel or targeting to the NDC target. We have made a very ambitious NDC target, which is for 40% by 2041. So these are some of the specific action points that are being considered. But having said so, we also need to keep in mind that Bangladesh is not very blessed in terms of solar irradiance. The solar irradiance is 4.3 to 4.5 kilowatt hour per meter square per day in Bangladesh, which is approximately 30 to 40% lower than India. So that makes the PPA tariffs expensive, still around 9 cents. And the floating solars are at least 30% more expensive than the land-based solar. So with all these considerations, again, we are coming to power trade and CBET, because even for renewables, maybe it will be more sensible, at least as of today, to import rather than practice.
Okay, thank you for that addition. Also, Adil, you mentioned that big countries and small countries. I don't think there's an issue in interconnection of big countries with small countries, even in synchronous connections, because the reserves, if they are shared, they'll be proportionately shared. I mean, depending on the size of the country. That's one. So it's not that Bangladesh is expected to share the same arithmetically the same amount of reserves as a big country. So I don't think there should be an issue in that. But there are issues on when you connect a big country which has a large short circuit capacity with a small country which has a small short circuit, which basically means that the circuit breakers are designed differently for small countries. It could be 40 kiloamperes for small countries and 50 or 60 kiloamperes for big countries. But that's also, there are ways of doing that. There are current limiters which can be put on the interconnections so that the country does not have to change its circuit breakers, because that would be a big job. So there are ways of doing that, and hopefully with the common minimum grid code that which has this provision, if we do that, these are technical rules. The grid code are the rules by which they operate in a safe manner, the interconnected. Once that is finalized, I think that a lot of issues should be solved, right? Now I'd like yes, Nazmul, I think you mentioned about energy security, or was it Adil, about countries? It's right that countries do not depend too much on from the energy security point of view beyond a certain amount, because if you depend too much on only imports, then it could cause an energy security issue. For example, in Sri Lanka, they had, although the generation plants are indigenous, but most of the fuel is imported, except of course the hydro and the renewables. So that's an issue where some countries set limits, and Bangladesh has set a limit that imports should not exceed 15% of the total consumption. And in BIMSTEC countries, Thailand has also put a limit that they should not import more than 10 to 15% of their consumption at a later stage. So these are the country's own decisions, which is fine. But on a net basis, I think, because for example, Nepal would export as well as import. So maybe on a net basis, this could be done on a net basis. So I'm just trying to address the security issue which was raised over here.
Actually, it has to be seen from from the top, because when we say the import of electricity, which is the final product, so that is limited to 12 to 14% as per the latest IPMP. However, in Bangladesh, the current energy mix is at least 52% by indigenous gas, but we say it indigenous gas, but we are saying that for the last 5 years, the LNG is being imported, and at least it is blended at a 3:1 ratio to the national gas grid, meaning that the primary energy is also, it adds up to the energy security perspective, and at least 30% was from liquid fuel. So whether or not we set a target for the final product, electricity import, be limited to 12 to 14%, at the same time, we have to see it in parallel with the primary fuel import, because we are seeing what is happening due to this Ukraine crisis.
Rohan, I have missed you out, so I'll ask you questions about. You said that from the firm generation, you're planning to go into RLNG in the future, which is regasified LNG. So that's of course a better than oil-based generation. It's probably cheaper also and cleaner. So that's a good step. Only thing is, again, it will be imported, because you have, I believe, you're exploring basins, gas basins in the Manar region. Could you tell us latest about that? Because again, as we mentioned, that it would be good to have your indigenous resources to a substantial extent, so that you are not dependent too much on imports in Sri Lanka. And also the right thing about increasing the amount of hydro and renewable capacity in Sri Lanka, which is going to help, I think, to that from the energy security point of view. Could you tell us about the exploration in the Manar Basin?
Yeah. Sri Lanka has already harnessed its hydro potential. Almost all the major hydros have been done. and there are few mini hydros left. Of those also will be completed in the next few years. So there is no additional hydro potential for the firm capacity of power generation. So in that case, we have to live with coal power to a reasonable time, and also to have new sources. So we have been looking for a new source for last many years, and the source for which we are embarked on is natural gas, for which we have done a lot of studies, feasibility studies, pre-feasibility studies with the support of the Asian Development Bank, and we have floated the tender, and it is in the final stage for the final decision. So it is a must to go for natural gas, because there are environmental restrictions that was imposed by environmental authorities, so that in Colombo and the load centers, we are not in a position to run further diesel-based or furnace oil-based power plants. Therefore, LNG has to come as quickly as possible. It should be in operation by at least 2025. In the 2030 energy mix, we will do away with the oil. We'll try to bring oil almost to zero, so that the 2030 energy mix, we will have coal as well as the natural gas for firm power generation, in addition to our major hydro power plants that is existing. So natural gas is very important energy mix in time to come, along with the renewables and other sources. So the Mana Basin exploration, it has been under discussion for more than a decade now. A lot of discussions are taking place, a lot of new business proposals are coming. So if we find natural gas in Mana Basin in commercially extracted business models, because it has to be commercially viable. If it is commercially viable, of course, yes, we can use for power generation, but Mana is far away from the load centers. Load centers are in and around Colombo and the Western Province. Mana is far away. Then we have to have this particular gas pipelines from Mana to our power plants. So, and we have to look at various other possibilities also. So that is one option which is being discussed, but at the same time, as a stopgap arrangement, what we thought to go for FSRU, floating storage regasification unit, and the mooring system and the pipeline for 10 years period on BOT concept. So that is how we have developed the tender documents, specifications, and finalized our negotiations, and it is in the final stage for award now. So we are going for a stopgap arrangement for about 10 years on a FSRU basis, and if Mana Gas finds by that time, and if it is commercially viable, then we can bring Mana Gas also for power generation.
Thank you. I think that answers a number of questions. Now, there's one more question. You also mentioned about demand response. Now, we had a session yesterday on demand response, which is a very important resource for tackling intermittency rather than, battery. So it's much cheaper to have demand response. And you have a plan of demand response, which is basically reducing the demand instead of keeping standby generation or keeping a battery for when you have more of intermittent renewables. So what is the status of demand response? Have you put up a pilot, or is it?
Demand response is a must to reach this large renewable integration. So if we are going for 70% scenario by 2030, definitely demand response has to come. So we have initiated basic discussions on to bring business models for demand response, but still in the preliminary stage. So we are seeking support from Asian Development Bank also to develop suitable business models for Sri Lanka. So definitely by 2025, because the first plan we are going for 2023 to 2026. So first plan, we may be able to manage with the existing transmission lines and without that much of battery capacities and without curtailments, the first plan. But the second plan, we have to have demand response. So by 2025, 2026, definitely we should have commercially operated demand management schemes, demand response schemes.
Thank you. Any other questions from the floor? Yes, please.
I'm Riyaz Sangani. I'm a developer from Sri Lanka. I'm carrying on from where Madam Nuhur said that it's cheaper to buy renewable energy from outside than developing Bangladesh because it's quite expensive to develop renewable in Bangladesh. So on that basis, on that premise, I'm just saying, would it be better to know what is the cost of renewable energy in each of these countries? Because if you're trying to integrate, we should have an idea from where which is be profitable to flow. Because all this will require a lot of infrastructure. Infrastructure means investment, and investment means you need a return on those financial investments. So to work, so will it be, I feel, be better to look at the cost in each country and also see, okay, from where if it flows, how these investment recoveries can take place. And I feel maybe there are a lot of other complications, but if that comes up to the open, might create a more compelling case to create a more integrated grid interconnection between all these countries. Thanks.
May I contribute a bit for that? I think Riaz, your question is a very valid question. So we have been studying this with the support of the PwC for Sri Lanka-India grid connection business models. So what we found was if you are importing renewable energy from India from day-ahead market, it is approximately about 450 to 5 US cents in that region. So then the transmission cost will be about 250 in that range. So then it comes to about 6-7 US cents if you are buying renewable energy from India. But those things can change within the demand of India, and so many things can change. These are some of the studies done by PwC on behalf of ADB for the viability of this particular India-Sri Lanka interconnection. So in Sri Lanka, of course, the renewable prices are in the range of 10 US cents. The going rates are around 10 US cents. The solar, wind, and other things are in that particular range. So then somebody can say that it is cheaper to buy from India rather than doing it in India. But it is not the case because the power flows both sides. The business models say that Sri Lanka-India interconnection is a win-win situation because we can definitely export. We have large quantities of renewable power, especially the wind power in the country. So during essential times, essential period, essential hours, we can export. India also may require that kind of power in time to come with the economic development of India. So definitely we can export, definitely we can import. So maybe we can have a win-win situation so that both sides will be beneficial. And also we are not going to go for large quantities on this, the interconnections. What we thought was 500 megawatts by 2030 and another 500 by 2024. Even in the energy mix that we have done for 2030, about 6% that we are envisaging to import from Indian side. So it's a mix. So you have to be strategically prepare the mix, and strategically and technically feasible solutions have to be done. We are working on that.
On this topic, because it's also important for many other participants also, so I would like to also bring in MD Gesing sir, because you have also a lot of experience of buying and selling in India, especially in the prices and so on. Any thoughts you want to share or any insights?
I think this trade will give benefit to everybody. But in Nepal, hydropower, the cost of generation of hydropower will be definitely lower than the cost of generation of renewable in Bangladesh or somewhere else. So even if we pay the transmission charges, the cost of the price of electricity will be lower than what they are getting now or what they are projecting the price. Even for Sri Lanka, I think that if transmission connectivity is there and you pay 1 rupee or how much it comes transmission charges, and that will be much more cheaper for you for Nepal's hydropower. So hydropower and it will be much more cheaper and not only cheap electricity you are getting, you are contributing to the this climate change. Because Nepal and Bhutan now is contributing to the renewable source The first, I think we are utilizing 100% renewable and we are exporting also. But due to climate change, the most affected country is Nepal and Bhutan, because our Himalayas are now dried because of climate change. In dry season, we could not get enough generation. This year itself, 30% reduction in generation of hydropower in dry season because of this no snow, and sometimes high flood, sometimes no snow. This is because of the global warming and global impact of this electricity generation. And then 75% in Nepal, in India and China, it's generation of electricity from coal and other sources. So this impacts a lot. If you purchase or if you develop Nepal's hydropower, then you will get cheaper electricity and you will be contributing to climate change. So this is, I think, this will be very much beneficial for everybody. And Sri Lanka, I think one of the Sri Lankan developer, he has developed 10 megawatt of hydropower in Nepal. So he is now developing more and more hydropower. So I think, and Bangladesh is going to develop 683 megawatt of Disun Kosi 3. And there are many Indian developers, around 5,000 megawatt of hydropower is being developed by Indian developers. And our own developers and public sectors has already taken initiative to develop more than 15,000 megawatt. So let's develop as soon as possible Nepal's hydropower, and that will give more sense to price and climate change issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Want to say something?
I think this cross-border electricity exchange among BIMSTEC countries is the most important thing, I think. Then, as he said, we can exchange power from one country to another country. I need not to export or import only from India, so I can access the markets in Nepal or Thailand or any BIMSTEC country, so that the power exchange will work more effectively if we have these interconnections among BIMSTEC countries. I think I was in India for the BIMSTEC interconnection strategic meeting, and I think they have done the framework now. The framework is being approved, and where all the policies are dictated, how the costs are being dictated, how the approvals and all tariff methodologies and things like that. So if that is approved and the BIMSTEC countries come to consensus on exchange of power among the countries, I think then this power exchange will happen. Perhaps we can have short and long-term contracts also. On top of that, we can have power from exchange from various other BIMSTEC countries. So that will be a very interesting situation to come.
Thank you. So just on what Mr. Gishin was saying, we did a study for India-Sri Lanka connection in accordance with the actual costs of HVDC. And we found that Sri Lanka was saving on the oil generation up to around 40%, even if you take into account the transmission charge, only on the fuel portion. So it's a huge benefit, for this. I mean, the details of the calculations we'll share later, but that's something which, I'm sorry for taking up so much time, but I'd like to throw open this to the audience if they have any questions. Yeah, okay. If you could come to the mic, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Chandan Ghosh from Nepal Electricity Authority. I guess energy has no color or caste. However, there's some generation from our country is not permitted because to be traded in India, because they are built by Chinese funding or by Chinese contractors. So is it a common problem in South Asia, or how can we solve this problem?
So I'd rather not comment on any comments policies. I think this is more a session where we facilitate rather than obstruct. So anybody else, any question? Any other questions? It'd be great to get ideas so as to we facilitate cross-border electricity trade, because I think there's, as I said, there's a win-win situation for all the countries. Sri Lanka, it suffered a major crisis in the last 1 year, and I mean, I was hoping personally that that it didn't happen, because it was 12 hours of power cuts at one time, and even more sometime in some places. If it was connected at that time, I thought the situation wouldn't have been so bad. Anyway, what has happened has happened, but it's yeah.
The little thing, it is not really because we did not have capacity. We had the capacity, but we did not have dollars. So we did not have dollars to buy oil. Even in the exchange of power, if we don't have dollars, nobody will send power to us. So that's a totally different scenario. But as a fact, we got rid of power cuts 15th February this year, and now no power cuts. It's 24 hours quality supply to 7 million customers of Sri Lanka. So it's going very smoothly now with the recovery of the economy and recovery of the other power sector as well. So things are in much better stage. And also, as he said, the benefits are going to come for both the countries, because the renewable drive of 70% will not have any fuel by 2030. So we are not really saving on fuel, but we are saving on the cheap energy, perhaps import from India, and also the excess capacity of renewable during different time slots export into India. So we have done the complete studies during last many months. So it's a win-win project. So we have to do it as quickly as possible.
Yeah, could you come to the mic, please?
Hello, my name is Preeti and I work in WRI India. So thank you for the insightful presentation. So the panel discussed about building more and more cross-border transmission line for cross-border trade. So I have a question around transmission and distribution losses that will happen through these transmission or the networks that will be created. So what are your thoughts on that, and how much that will be, and any plans on mitigating that?
So when we are talking about major interconnections, they are transmission, and transmission losses are basically technical losses, whereas distribution losses are technical plus commercial, in the sense that there could be theft in distribution. There would be no theft in transmission, the high voltage lines. They're normally of the order of 3% or 4% in transmission system, where if it's more well designed, you could have slightly little lower, maybe 0.5% lower, but it's as far as transmission is concerned for cross border, there's not much of an issue. But I'd like to.
So there can be little improvements because even how you operate the power system determine the transmission losses. It can vary from 3.5 to 2.5. So if you really operate it, you can be in 2.7, 2.8%. So if we have the cross-border connections, then we can plan in our generation such a way that the transmission losses are minimum. So there will be definitely a not very big amounts, so maybe 0.2 to 0.3, 0.45 benefit if you have interconnections as such. So for the distribution side, I don't think that much of impact. In Sri Lanka, the total transmission and distribution losses are 9.8%. I think it is the best in the region. So we manage transmission and distribution losses together up to the consumer end, 9.8%.
Any other questions? Last question, because time is actually over. Any comments, any questions? Otherwise, we'll close the session. Thank you very much for staying on. I hope it was insightful. I found it very insightful. Thank you to all the panelists here, Mr. Gishing, Rohan, Adil, and Nazmun. thank you very much for your presentations, and thank you for the audience.